Welcome to Liddypod, Beatles banter with Bedford and Beasley.
So Dave, here we are again for Liddypod. Can't remember where we're up to, but we're somewhere getting almost into double figures now, I think. We're not in any eating place today, it makes a pleasant change, because I need to shed a few pounds anyway. But it's really good to be back with you. Dave, what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about the Brian Epstein statue in Liverpool, trying to raise the money to get a statue up for Brian, which is only right, by Andy Edwards, who sculpted the four Beatles down at the pier head. So there's a campaign going and we need to get the money in.
Now, this is going to be a great statue because if anything, previous work by Andy Edwards is to go by, it's going to be great because, anyone that's been to Liverpool, anyone that's seen images even of these statues down at the waterfront, they are absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure you're the same, Dave, I've never been down at the pier head when there hasn't been someone there taking photographs of those Andy Edwards statues.
Well, exactly. I think they've become one of the most popular tourist attractions already. In the short space of time they've been there, he's such a good sculptor. And of course, we've already seen the maquettes of the Epstein one, and they look absolutely brilliant.
So, Dave, tell us about a little bit about this campaign, because you went along to the campaign launch, didn't you?
Yeah, and it's fantastic. There's a great little team in Liverpool who's putting all this together, and they've got a fundraising page up there trying to raise £60,000. And so what I did was I went to speak to Marie Darwin because she's one of the members of the team, and I sort of started by saying, well, how did you come up with the idea? What was the inspiration?
Okay, so how the project started was in 2015, myself, Marie Darwin, with a team organised a plaque on Brian's birthplace, number 4 Rodney Street. Brian would have been 80 that year, and we thought it was a great time to be significant, put it out there and give him something, some recognition somewhere in his home city. And then from there, I always had the idea of, wouldn't it be brilliant to have a statue? And on the day that they unveiled still a statue in Matthew Street, I was talking to Andy Edwards, who's the artist for the Beatles down the waterfront, and just happened to say to him, what about Brian? They've tried before, couldn't we have another go? And he said, tell me about it, and we had a little discussion, and I always felt Brian was always on the move, and he had the same idea, so we had a couple of plans together, and then the next day he actually messaged me with these plans and said, look, I've started making a move on a maquette. So I was like, well, this is brilliant. Got Julie and Kevin Roach, the Liverpool writers and historians, on board. Then we got Bill Elms on board. And Bill's got his own business sitting in now. He's got his own PR business in Liverpool. And then along came Tom Calderbank, who's worked on institutions like the Florey and things like that before. And Tom is a real shaker and mover and knows quite a bit of people in the city. So he's got us moving along. And then Larry Sidwich has come on board as well. So we've got a team that has got various skills. It's really good. If one's a little bit down, the other will pep them up. One can do this, one can talk to somebody else, one will send an email here. So I think within us, we've got real positive vibes that we can do this. Even with 13 days to go from today, we're like, come on, we can do this. So that was the very beginning of it.
So that sounds exciting. And on our Liddypod podcast, we have an award called the MBE and Mr. Brian Epstein, because we've always said, without Brian, the Beatles would never have made it out of Liverpool. Would you agree?
I totally agree. I mean, I've just been rereading Alistair Taylor's book this week, and he was alongside him for all of that time. And, the tenacity of the man to actually get on that train to London, to take the disc, My Bonnie, or to take an acetate and go round companies that he didn't really know at the time and say, listen to these boys. He really, really pushed it for them. I mean, I was thinking on the way here, November, he meets them in the cavern. Okay, you might have knew them briefly before, but that was the official meeting in the cavern. By January, he signed them. By May, he's got them a record contract. And by October, they've got the first single out. And by February, the following year, which is 14, 15 months, they've got a number 1. absolutely amazing, and it was only his tenacity and the way he pushed them all over the world that got them there. Yeah, we know they were brilliant songwriters, and not just John and Paul, but George as well. And who knows where they would have gone, but they needed someone at that time to be able to go and do that and to believe in them. It's also not just about the music, it's about the image. The Beatles image is so iconic, you know, with the wigs and the suits and the boots. And how many people now all around the world are actually making a business out of the Beatles? And that was because of Brian's thought, his promotion, his tenacity, and the way he put them out there.
This is probably just a wild guess, but you seem to be slightly passionate about this. Would that be right?
Yeah, definitely. I think as a 4-year-old going into school with that Beatles book, and I didn't realise at the time what he'd done, but then as you learn more and more as time goes on, he wasn't just a manager. He was their best friend. He just done everything for them, even for Scylla as well, and for Jerry and his other artists. You know, he paid for things for them. He sorted bills out for them. He done birthday lunches, and whatever they wanted, he done. He wasn't just your manager with the 20% or whatever it was. He was amazing for them, and people need to know that. They need to be looking at this statue saying, okay, so if you don't know him, who is he? What did he do? Well, we'll tell you what he done. Look at the statue, we'll tell you what he done. He needs that recognition in what would have been his 85th year.
So what if someone would say, well, really they did their records and all stuff in London? Should this be in Liverpool or London, would you say?
Well, I would say it's got to be in Liverpool because this is his hometown and this is where it started out. We're the ones in Liverpool, the team and all from Liverpool. Now the fans are doing it all around the world, but Liverpool is his hometown. It's our base, so yeah, it needs to be here. Somebody wants to raise it and go and put it in London in another year or two, you can have another one. Why shouldn't they have another one down in London? Liverpool face.
So you mentioned at the beginning about the blue plaque that you managed to get on Brian's birthplace, just down the road from here on Rodney Street. So how did that one come about?
That all come about, I think, looking at Fred O'Brien's plaques around the city and stuff. And I worked in a nursery just around the corner. And what I used to do with the little ones from Rodney Street, from Oxford Street and Hope Street and all round, I'd take them on little tours. We even had a yellow submarine hunt one day, and we actually hid it on the steps in Rodney Street and then walked all round to John's birthplace, and look, we found the yellow submarine. So for Rodney Street, for me, working in the nursery and the after school, I used to go, why isn't it recognised? And I'd be saying to the children, do you know who was born here? And because I was the nursery nurse with the big Beatles passion, they knew who John, Paul, George and Ringo were, but they didn't know who Brian was. But they did once we put the plaque on number 4 Rodney Street.
So do you think, maybe picking up on that theme, that people could recognise, there's statues for the Beatles there, but maybe not enough people have said, well, why isn't there recognition for Brian maybe?
Well, that's it exactly, isn't it? You know, you've got 4 boys, but who put them 4 boys there? Who helped them? And me and you know that in this city, there's lots of minor figures that really put their name on it and helped them in all different ways. There's a whole team, but he was the main one that said, right, this is what we're going to do. He was the one that traipsed around London with that tape in his bag. Nobody else. He was the one that pushed them, promoted them, that had the idea, and took them to America and then the world.
That's interesting you're talking about, with your job in the nursery, because you've also turned into an author as well. So just tell us a little bit about your books.
Right, my books, again, because I used to tell the stories of the Beatles for children in the nursery and the after school that I was running. And I just decided to write it down in print. So I know that children love rhyme. So that was the idea. I don't know why, because George is my favourite Beatle, but for some reason Paul's story come into my head first. And I'm sitting on a bus going to work one morning, and I'd got most of it down by the time I'd gone into work. I must have been stuck in traffic. But I got most of it down. And what we done was, from the June before it was printed, I tried it out with the children in the nursery, and I knew it was working when this 3-year-old little boy used to come in and he'd be looking. Mum said, he has got me up the wall, he keeps looking for Grandad Paul, because the book title was, What Did Grandad Paul Do When He Was Little? And then 2 years later, I've done the same with John's story, again in rhyme. So I know it works with children. I go round to the nurseries, we take a Beatles history box and we do the story. And by the end of these stories, the children know the rhyme. They know Paul's story, they know John's story. And where are we? 2018, Paul's on the Phil on June the 9th. And it just so happened, because I'd been doing a market stall in the morning, that I had the books with me. And I was very, very lucky standing outside the Phil when they decided to send a few extra people in. And I was one of those extra people. So just at the end, as he was going along the line, because I had the books with me, I just very quickly didn't think, just pulled the book out and went, Mackin, have you seen the book? And he went, I've got it, love it. And now he's got his own granddad story out. So I think I'm his Eleanor Rigby for now. I'm his muse.
I would go with that one. Definitely. I love it. So how important is it then that the following generations know not just about the Beatles, but what Brian did? Again, not just for the Beatles, but for Liverpool as a city.
Well, that's it, because if you look around our city and you look at how much tourism we've got coming from the Beatles mainly, but obviously I'm on a site and there's a lot of Silla fans out there that come to the city as well. There's a lot of Jerry fans. So him doing what he done has brought so much tourism and so much business to our city. But not only that, all around the world there's people doing Beatles tours, there's people writing books. Everywhere, every single one of us owes our thank you for that man, for his tenacity. Not just for boys, he's done it for us. So we need to go, thank you very much. And a statue is the way of doing it.
Perfect. So we're partway through the campaign now. There's still a couple of weeks to go. So what is the target? Where are we up to? And then, obviously, importantly, how can people help?
Right, okay. Well, first of all, we've got 13 days to go. And the target this morning when I looked was almost £8,000. And so we've got 13 days then to raise £52,000. And I believe we can do this. There is more than 52,000 Beatle fans all around the world. Imagine if we all put £1 in. So the link is www.brianepsteinstatue.com. You can go on there and you can donate exactly what you want. 52,000 people donate £1. We've got it. There we go. But there's also some brilliant rewards on there. From £5 you can get in the Hall of Fame. For £10, £5 apologise, you can get a certificate. From £10 you can get in the Hall of Fame. £15 you can go with Andy in the new year and you can put a piece of clay on the statue in the foundry in Liverpool. And that will be sorted for a time that suits you. You can link with Andy Edwards, who's our artist for that one. And then it goes right up. There's a couple of tours of the city in there as rewards as well. And then what we've got, Andy has done 9 maquettes of Brian, which are selling for 1,300, which I think is an absolute bargain, because he's a renowned sculptor and they're only going to go up in price. And then you've got £9,000, you've got 9 busts of Brian limited edition. So any businesses, hotels and anything out there, they would be amazing. And again, they're going to go up in price. And then the ultimate piece is called The Vision and is the 4 boys alongside Brian, and that is £23,000. But that is going to be a one-off. I mean, I think when George Harrison's book came out all those years ago, and it was £150 at the time because George had signed it, you are now looking at a good few thousand for that book. Beatles stuff will only go up in the future. So if you invest in this, it will be something for your future as well.
So basically we should invest in Brian, invest in Liverpool, and of course in Andy, who, as you say, is an amazing sculptor as well. So put your hands in your pockets, people. Come on. I've already done my bit. I'm looking forward to sticking my bit of clay on. I'm in there already. Yeah. So again, thank you, Marie. Thank you so much. No problem. Best of luck for this, and let's do this for Brian.
Hashtag let's do it. Hashtag let's do it. We can do this. Come on. Let's say a big thank you to Brian, and this is our way as fans to do it. please pledge as little as £1. 52,000 people, £1. That's not a lot. When we have Paul in Liverpool, I know for a fact that Paul's VIP tickets go for £1,000. Paul isn't touring or doing concerts at the moment. That money you would have put on Paul's concerts, give it to us for Brian. There you go. Thank you.
Bob Geldof, eat your heart out. Fantastic, Marie. Well done. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Liddypod, Beatles banter with Bedford and Beasley.
That was absolutely brilliant, Dave. Really good way to finish a great interview there. And you're absolutely right. She knows what she's doing. In fact, Marie, as you quite rightly mentioned, was the person that really got things going in terms of recognition for Brian Epstein with that plaque that she was talking about there.
Yeah, and that, again, it's very important. You know, Brian, as Marie rightly said, with much enthusiasm, you know, without Brian, the Beatles would not have gone out of Liverpool. They would not have made it. He was an absolute genius, and yet he doesn't get as much recognition as he should have. So getting the plaque up on his birthplace at Rodney Street, fantastic. And as you can hear, you know, the enthusiasm that Marie's got and the whole team have got. And I think all of us as Beatles fans have got. So we've got to make this happen, but we've only got about a week left to raise the money, and we're still quite a way off the target. So, as Marie says, give us your money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dave. Not very long left to try and get this statue, this very important statue, funded. If people do want to give, how can they go about that?
As Marie said, just go to the website, which is epsteinstatue.co.uk. So it's epsteinstatue.co.uk. That's got the link to the funding page as well. There's all kinds of amazing goodies there, depending on the level of your support. So please, if thousands of us get together and just put a small donation in, we can easily get this done.
Well, Dave, well said there, and well said as well for Marie and her team. Short and sweet one, this one, but we just wanted to get that message out about the Brian Epstein statue. If you can give, even as Dave has said, just a small amount, lots of people giving small amounts will make all the difference. Dave, our next Liddypod is going to be back to the standard length. Who are we talking to next time?
This was a fascinating interview I did a few years back when I was researching my second book, The Fab 104. And I interviewed Andy White. And Andy was the session drummer who was brought in by George Martin to make the first record of Love Me Do. Fascinating guy, sadly no longer with us, but so I've dug this one from my archives. Great interview with him, lovely guy. So Andy White, session drummer, Love Me Do, got to be heard. Brilliant.
I can't wait to hear this one because it's part of the Beatles story, which I find it absolutely fascinating and often misunderstood as well. So really looking forward to that. So thanks very much for joining us on Liddypod, this special Liddypod to talk about the Brian Epstein statue. Do give if you can, and do join us again for the next one when, as you heard from Dave, we'll be talking about Andy White.
I think we might need another breakfast though, Paul. What do you reckon?
Do you know, I think you're absolutely right, Dave. Yeah, let's get it organised now. Get your diary out.
You've been listening to Liddypod, Beatles banter with Bedford and Beasley.